And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 60th of Global Citizens. My name is Calvin, and I am the show's host, and I'm also its creator. So, my guest for today actually have very several first unique. So, she is actually the very first guest that I invited after interviewing me on her own podcast. And the second
Ah,
one was actually the first person who, oh, sorry, one of the first three people who actually found out about my routine before I actually go live. So in case you guys don't know, I actually like to sing on YouTube. So yeah, she actually heard about it when, well, it helps me to test my mic at least.
I didn't know you
So
were singing on YouTube. Wow, I'm going to look you
no,
up
no,
now.
no, I will just play on YouTube videos, and then anything that caught my attention, then I'll just play with it. So that's another story. And with that, so I actually need to introduce this amazing lady. So she is a lawyer, a speaker, and as I mentioned earlier, she's a podcaster. She advises business for startups to mature multinationals across Asia. Her main specialty is in China, Hong Kong, and the UK, of which she was actually qualified at. This has also led her to become a regular speaker at industry conferences on all things legal, legal tech, and podcasting. So during the pandemic, she created the Coexisting Podcast, a storyboard based audio show speaking to the people around the world of their experiences sheltering at home due to coronavirus. So, yeah, without further ado, allow me to introduce her. Her name is Miss Lara Lightbody. So, hi, Laura. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Thank you for a beautiful welcome. Lovely to be
Hope
on.
You are very welcome, and I hope I do justice to your introduction.
That was a great intro. That
Thank
was
you.
a great intro.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we will begin with the very, very first question. Yeah. And I am so sorry, but you have to hate me for this. So, first off, is that what is your definition of home? And does it lean more towards the people or places? Laura?
Well, I'm kind of surprised that you say that people hate this question. I don't hate this question. I think it's a very good question, actually. Um, so for me, I sound British, but my mother is actually from the Czech Republic. And my grandmother is from Switzerland. So I'm a big melange of lots of different countries anyway. And I've lived abroad for, I think, just under 20 years of my 40 years on this planet. So abroad, meaning outside of the UK. So for me, I think, because I've thought about this a lot every time I move, it takes a while, doesn't it, to find your comfort level with the new country that you're in. And for me, home is really having my family around me, my husband and my kids. And it's also actually populating the space that I'm in with recognizable parts of my life, my books, my music, this crazy sofa that we carry everywhere with us. That is home. Um, and I really pride myself on making that home very quickly in new countries every time I move. So just to give you an example, I've actually moved 3 times, 3 countries in the last 3 years. So that's a lot of moving. And I don't have the luxury, especially now with coronavirus. I can't go back to the UK at all because the border is closed. So for me, yes, it's about making home wherever you are. I hope that answers the question.
It does. It does. All right. So, for those of you who just tuned into the show for the very first time, Global Citizens is a platform whereby I invited those who has experienced a multicultural lifestyle. So, like Lara and myself, both of us are third culture kids. We are those who grow up outside of our passport country and or we grow up outside of our parents' birth country. So, along with that, I've invited digital nomads, global nomads, international speakers, and expatriates. So, why I actually invited such individuals is because I want people to understand the difference between traveling and living. So, yes, when you do travel, you are exposed to a new culture. However, within a few days or so, you are back to your own home. You are back to something that you're familiar with. Whereas those who grow up outside of their passport country, we need to acclimatize ourselves, we need to ingratiate ourselves into a different society. We have to adapt our mindset. We have to adapt our character in a ways that those native to us may not understand us. So to give you guys an example, if you guys ever heard somebody like myself, maybe when we say I'm an Indonesian, and you will tell me, "Oh, I've been to Bintan, I've been to Bali. I'm so sorry, but you guys do not qualify as what we have experienced." Is because those areas are built in order to accommodate expatriates. And in Indonesia, it's not as beautiful and as safe as rosy as those areas could be. So I will now dive in back to Lara. Okay. We
Good
actually
points.
will. Sorry.
Very good points.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes. Thank you so much. All right. All right. So for this next particular question is I actually want to ask with your experience when you repatriate back to United Kingdom, for example, and when you experience a new culture, how do you adjust to it quickly? And how do you have ever, does it has ever physically or mentally challenged you in any way?
Um, I think I've got better at it, but yes, it's very challenging. It's very challenging every time. Um, I think, if you've grown up outside of, as you say, your passport country, which I was very lucky to do, I think, I don't know if you agree with me here, but you have a very natural curiosity about new cultures. So the minute you arrive, it's just very exciting and you want to learn all about everything that's new and different, and you want to eat the new food and you want to try and learn a few words of the new language. So that kind of sustains you for a few months. And then it's like, whoo, this is tough. This is different. And these are the challenges. And that starts to creep in. So yes, it is very challenging. I've worked out, because I actually bizarrely do think about these things, that it takes me 6 months to get through the high and then the low and then back to a kind of mid-level where I actually start to feel comfortable in this new country. So what was the second part of the question you asked?
Regarding how has it been challenging for
Oh,
you and how do you adjust to it quickly?
yeah. How do I adjust quickly? Yeah, good point. So what I do is I really seek out friends. I'm very purposeful about going to meetup groups, or meetup. The website's really good for this. Or like, I'm a mum, so I get involved with mums groups, because the more connections that you find quickly of people that have lived there either for a long time or who have lived there their whole lives, you get like a fast track into life. And you find your tribe, you find your people to help you with that transition. So that is invaluable, to go out there and get those friends. And like I said before, just surround yourself with things that you love, like your books and your music, because it helps kind of soften the blow. And I think one thing that happens, it depends on the person, but I know a lot of people, they really hold on to home, like the home that they were in before. I've been guilty of that too. But you need to open up to the new place. That will make the transition easier. If you're constantly thinking back, you can get quite stuck in a mentally not a great place. I think it's very important to look forward.
I actually agree with that because I've used the same trick several times. And to me, I have another one, and that is actually finding also a creative outlet. So one of the inspiration for Global Citizens was it's because I was having difficulty with repatriating back to Jakarta at that time. So at that time, the main motivation was I just want to be able to talk to people around the world. I just want to be able to feel connected to the world. And yeah, eventually it became a concept to me to think that, hey, maybe there are those who are definitely feeling this way for us global citizens. So as a result, okay, what if I make it into a live show so that people can just access in, you can just see what is going on. And yeah, maybe this is why the style that I do is a little bit more impromptu. And yeah, this is so far has been something that I've been really passionate about.
It's a really good idea. And one thing I would say, which you touched upon there, is I think repatriation is even harder, because I think if you've not done it before, if there's someone's listening who has not repatriated, the bit that's the real shocker is that you just never think you're going to have a culture shock going home. I don't think it occurs to us as humans that we will go home and have a culture shock. But the culture shock is huge because suddenly you look at your country through very different eyes. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, and also sometimes people expect you to actually know the internal culture of what is going on. When you just came back, you are practically as clueless as a child when what is actually happening. This does not seem familiar. So I think this is actually an issue that I feel people should be much more aware of.
Yeah.
So my next question is actually based on one of the viewers of the show who has spoken to me before. So she is a South Korean. She actually grew up in Australia and Philippines. So two areas which has an incredibly lot more accepting and a lot more open-minded. And as we know, South Korea is heavily strong on discipline and stringent on discipline. So it was a difficult time for her to adjust back. So my next question is this. This is from her remark last time. What do you think has been the positive thing and yet has also been something that you feel in a sense is a curse as being a multicultural? Lara?
Wow, that's a big question. It has to be the same thing, right? Positive and negative. Okay. Well, I mean, look, the big thing for me, it's not exactly very original, is that, I choose this life. I'm very blessed that I can choose this life. A lot of people are doing this and it's chosen for them. Traveling and meeting new people and exploring new cultures. I grew up like this. So this for me is my happy place. But, and there is a big but, I think it does increase alienation between me and my friends back home. Because
there's always a big but.
They don't.
Okay, no pun intended. No pun intended.
I don't think they understand, and that there is a distance between us as a result. I don't think they really understand why we move so much, or why it's not universally happy. They're like, why are you moving? If it's not universally happy, why are you doing it? So there is that distance that's created, and that is tough to do. My family and my friends. My family mainly understand because they also travel a lot. But friends back home, I don't think necessarily completely understand. And the other thing, which is hard, is that you miss big moments of other people's lives. If you're not always in the same place, you miss birthdays and sadly funerals and big moments of growing with your family. You just don't experience because you're not there all the time, which is tough. But I wouldn't change it. I still love being abroad.
I actually do experience that because I grew up most of my life in Singapore, especially during my teens, pre-teens, to even till my early 20s. So yeah, I do experience that. There's also a lot of times whereby I have a counter culture with my own parents who would have expected me, being their son, to actually follow in their mindset. But of course, with the way I grow up, and not that I don't love or not that I don't respect my parents, but it's just difficult because they would have expected to put me in a box that this is what they know, this is the model that we use to raise your sister. So we would have expected you to follow it. But the thing
why
is,
doesn't it work for you?
Why doesn't it work for you? Why are you different?
Yeah.
So yeah, it has been challenging at times too. So I can really relate to that area. All right. Sorry about that. Yeah. So we actually. Oh, sorry.
It's just a bit of traffic, right?
Yeah, there's a little bit traffic. Sorry, guys. Usually it's a lot more quiet in the middle of the night, but I'm not sure why today everybody is a lot more active. I think it's because everybody's catching up for after COVID.
You're lucky I'm not opening the window. It's so loud here, the traffic. It's just come back amazingly loud in America.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
My windows and my doors are closed, yet I can still hear the traffic. Wow. That is
we've got
something.
good windows.
Ah, can you get me your contractor?
I will.
Seriously?
I'll definitely pass that information on.
Yeah, he can expand his business overseas. All right. Sorry about that. Okay. So, all right. So let me just get to the next question. Yeah. So now I actually want to ask regarding the reason how we actually met, which is the coexisting podcast. What inspired its creation, and also what do you hope to accomplish from it?
Well, yeah, we're very like-minded souls, aren't we? Because we chose to deal with the problem by starting a show, which I don't think everyone does. So basically, I'm a lawyer by trade, and that's what I do in my day job. But I was also developing on the side a show about exceptional working mothers and the incredible things that they were doing in their time, because I'm a fairly new mum of two, and I found that transition quite affecting. And I thought I wanted to bring more positive stories about the experience into the world, especially for women who are both mothers and working. But then, and I had all of my interviews lined up, we were in pre-production. I had interviews in China, Hong Kong, England, America, all lined up, and COVID hit, which meant that A, I couldn't fly anywhere, and B, every single working mother on the planet was just so overwhelmed with life that there was no way they were ready to say anything remotely helpful on an interview. It was not the right time. And America at that time had not shut down. But very suddenly, California shut down in March, which I think is a lot later than especially Asia. But it happened so quickly. Like Thursday night, my kids were sent home early from school. Friday night, offices closed. And by Saturday, the streets were empty. And we had no warning. It was not like in Hong Kong and in China, where it was a gradual build up and people were so aware that they were ready. And it was scary. It was scary because it was so sudden, the lockdown. And so I thought, I'm scared. I'm worried about the future. What do I do next? And I began calling my friends in China and in Hong Kong and talking to them about, how does this situation play out? How long does it take for people to feel normal about lockdown? How are you feeling about the virus now? And those answers were so comforting to me at quite a scary time. I think it's hard for us to remember, but for everyone, when it first happened, it was scary. It was huge change overnight. That I thought, my God, what about all my friends who don't have contacts in China or who don't have contacts in Asia and don't really know what happens next? Would they like to hear these stories too? Would it also be a comfort for them? And I thought, great, let's pivot the show into something completely different and set up a show about interviewing people around the world during COVID, which I know is a bit crazy, possibly. But the minute I started, just like you, there was something about the quality of the insight from these people that I found so comforting. And I thought, my God, there's something here. There's something here for other people that they would love to listen to. And yeah, we've been live now for a month, just 1 month. It's crazy. Even it's been so busy. You probably know how busy it is running these things.
Yeah.
But we've had many, many people listen, and it's been wonderful. I'm really enjoying it.
That's wonderful to hear. Yeah, I do remember that. I think if just a little bit of a benchmark, usually when I have to go broadcast live, 4 or 3 hours, I will be staring in front of a
Really?
laptop, worrying about the most minute of
Really?
details. And yeah, I'm not ashamed to say it. I still do mess up once in a while because there are certain elements that I'm unable to control.
And you're doing it live,
but
which is so brave. I don't do anything live. I am like not live. My show is very created. So we have a 45 to 50-minute interview, and it's highly edited into a beautiful kind of story. That's what I do. So 45 minutes to about 12 minutes. It's very different. But it's funny, just before coming on the show this morning, my husband came in and he was like, why are you not preparing? Like, are you ready for this live interview? Have you done some work? And I'm like, no, I'm just going to go on. I feel quite relaxed about interviews. So
Yeah.
He was in shock.
So let me say hi to him. Yeah. My longest I've ever done for a broadcast is actually 1.5 hours live. So I don't know how I managed to do that either.
Wow.
That was
Don't
really
worry.
fun.
I won't make you do that. Actually, funnily enough, I have a friend. Everyone is suffering at the moment, right, financially, but she runs a business that's been very affected. It's a music school for children, and to help raise money to keep the business going during this time, she did a 12-hour live music gig. 12 hours playing without a break. 12 hours.
Wow.
So, yeah, she deserves a medal. It's pretty amazing.
Get a medal. She deserves a statue.
Incredible.
She deserves a statue.
I don't know how she did it, but she's still well after that. I don't know how, but yeah, that's the podcast. And Calvin, as you know, you were on it. It's a nice, relaxed process, but we've got interviews from all over the world. It's super fascinating.
Yes, I've seen it. I think now is on episode 12. Yeah. Is it?
13 we just released with another wonderful podcaster called James in Ghana in Africa.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, you should listen. It's a great one.
For those of you who want to tune in, I've already attached the link to Lara's podcast on the description box. Please check it out. It is fantastic. I've had a wonderful time when I was on her own show. So yeah, do check it out.
Thank you.
Apologies for the episode because I do remember the 12th. I didn't know the 13th one.
Gotta go and listen. Don't worry. You have time. There's lots of time. We've got time to do things like this right now.
All right. Okay, so yeah, earlier you mentioned that your own day-to-day job is actually you are a lawyer, yeah? So this is something a pattern that I observe for a lot of TCKs. So while it's not uncommon for TCKs to pursue any kind of career, they tend to lean more towards a career which is more towards creative or purpose-driven or something which has a lot more area of freedom, for one thing. So what actually makes you choose a career in the legal department, and how do you think you will manage this moving forward with both your podcast, with being a working mother, and a career in the legal sector?
So it's a very good question. Firstly, I am fascinated to hear that TCKs they go towards those sort of. I didn't know that. Is that research based that more driven?
Yeah. This is both research based actually, but at the same time, this is also my own experience since 50 episodes of over 50 TCKs. So of course, not all of them are TCK, since there are those who are expatriates or those who are nomads. However, with all of this, I do realize that TCK's career initially they will tend to lean towards a career that is more creative driven or something which allows them autonomy. And even those who actually do settle in, let's say, a day-to-day job, they still do lean towards to an area that is still towards more autonomy based. So this is something that I do observe. Of course, as I mentioned, it's not all the time. There are those TCK, of course, who pursue a not typical, day-to-day job that people would see them in a regular office setting. So this is just, however, there is both a very unique observation, and of course, there has been some studies on that.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, so I think as a TCK, as someone that grew up outside of their home country and traveled a lot as a child, I think the big driver for me with work is, without realizing it, I've only come to realize that recently, but I do get quite itchy feet if I'm in the same place for too long. Like I like to move jobs, I like to move countries, and that I've definitely observed in my friends that grew up internationally. They're exactly the same. There's a kind of a forward movement that's stronger than possibly in other people. I chose law because this is a completely stupid reason to choose a career. Don't do this. Because you're far too young, but LA law, like, was like one of these series dressing up in nice clothes, and they were all lawyers, and it was a bit like Suits of the 80s, you know, Suits. Anyway, I loved it, like really loved it as a kid. Ridiculous. And for that reason, I decided I wanted to be a lawyer. And I actually pursued the goal based on that ridiculous reason at 8 years old. But actually, it is a good career for me because I like to use my brain, and I like to constantly learn. And the one thing about law is you really can never sit still. It's always changing. And there's so much to learn. If you travel to a different country and practice there or work with law, you're always learning. So for me, it's actually a perfect career. But, and there's a big but, law is very traditional. It's very old school. It's changing slowly, but it's one of the oldest professions in the world, if you can think about it like that. I mean, lawyers have been around since humans have been around, you know? So I need that creative outlet. I like to write. I like to have a podcast because that keeps that side of my brain engaged. And I think it's really good to not be too rigid. And the legal world can make your thinking a little too rigid if you're not careful. So it's a good mixture.
As a graduate of business law, I that is something good.
Oh my God, studying law is absolutely, I mean, good luck to people who enjoy studying law. That is one of the most soul destroying things to study at university is law. Like, I wish I had studied something else. I found it tough, really tough, because there was no room for, not only was there no room for error, there was actually no room for creative thought at all. It was, you know, that's what the study of law is all about. Learning a lot and regurgitating a lot. So yeah, my tip for the top, if anyone wants to be a lawyer, is study something else and then transition to law. Study something you love, you know, like really gets your heart racing. Like, I wish I'd studied Arabic or Japanese or something instead. But it's fine. I've done it now. So I got through it.
You know that there's actually a very song about that, saying "Don't be a lawyer." That's
really
the title of the song.
No, definitely be a lawyer. Just don't study law. Actually, law is a great career. It's a great career. If you can make it work in this new climate and you're working for the right company, it can be wonderful. It really can. I've had a great time.
All right. I actually want to dive in a little bit of that. So, with regards to your career in law, earlier you mentioned in each new country you have to learn the legal proceedings of each of the country. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So aside from the legal process itself, what challenges have you encountered though, especially on terms like maybe culture? For one thing, is that well, it's not something that the show encourage, but the reality is it exists in the world. Issues such as sexism, or of course, there's also a different way when people perceive a certain age, race, colors. So, what challenge have you encountered with regards to this, Lara?
Well, I mean, I think it's an interesting one when you talk about culture. Firstly, I know that on the face of it, I'm extremely privileged. I'm a white woman, which for me already puts me in a place where there's a lot of, favor that I enjoy that is based on nothing other than the color of my skin. And I'm very conscious of that. But yeah, as a woman in a very male dominated environment, I've had my fair share of ridiculous comments and occasions. But I don't think this is right, but I think women in the workplace, we are used to that. It's actually, rightly or wrongly, is something we live with. So from a very young age, you get used to handling it. I'd love to see that change. I'd love my girls to come through to a society where they're not pulled up on things because they are female. But I think that change will be slow. But it's interesting what you mentioned about culture, because I actually think there's lots of cultures. There's the country culture. There's, being female or male. There's all these things. But also lawyers are their own culture. It's interesting, like lawyers know lawyers. I don't think all professions are like that. legal teaches you a certain way of thinking and being that means that we actually do have a kind of funny subculture amongst ourselves. So in the legal world, I would say it's very international and it's very respectful because we appreciate difference because legal is so different no matter where you go. You know, I think it's almost the opposite. We have a really healthy respect for other cultures within the legal community. And I was very lucky because I grew up in Hong Kong and I've worked in Hong Kong for many years. And Hong Kong really, I think, is a wonderful place to see a melding of cultures that works really well, and a really healthy respect for everyone in that space. So I've seen probably a very specific side of it, which has been very positive. There's been bad stories, of course, there's always bad stories, but I think the more we can work in different countries and the more we can experience different cultures, it's going to make all of us better at this new world. It's going to make all of us more respectful of other cultures. So I think we just need to keep encouraging that. I think it's really important.
Yeah, that's a beautiful line. That truly is. Yeah. My last episode, we actually invited Miss Donnie Ambrosins. She is the founder and editor of Cultures Magazine, a multicultural magazine. So this is something that we have discussed about as well, to be able to live up with what the late Dr. Martin Luther King has encouraged, to judge people not based on their skin or their gender, but based on their character and who they are. So,
but alongside that, also celebrate their differences, because I think, you know, as you will know, like where I am in California, in America, you know, it's been a very tough year, not only with COVID, but we've had lots of protests everywhere after the murder of George Floyd, and lots of people really examining their thought processes around race. And I've seen a big, I mean, I don't know enough about the situation in the US yet, but a real reckoning by Americans, like how much change has really happened since the civil rights movement? How much more do we have to do? And I think I was brought up wrongly, really wrongly, but I think it was the time that there was this thing about like, we don't see color doesn't exist. And actually, that was a great first step, this idea of being colorblind, but it's not true. And it doesn't make sense for children. And also it doesn't celebrate the wonderful diversity in our world. You know, we should be celebrating this beauty and difference of people, not pretending it doesn't exist, when of course it does exist. And it's real and very, very painful for many people living through that. So yeah, I'm excited for programs like what you're creating here, because it allows that little insight into other people's lives. That's what we need. We need more normal people who are just average people going about their day in all these different countries, talking to each other and sharing experiences. Sorry, I keep going on, but I feel passionate about this.
Not to worry. That is something that I'm really heartened to hear. And not to worry, I'm more encouraged if you are able to actually share as much as you can.
Yeah.
I'd rather hear you speak more rather than let me speak a lot more. So if you would like to, yeah, you can ask me a question, but please later on. Thank you. All right.
Makes your life a bit easier.
Thank you, but all right, Lara. So, okay, I actually want to jump something maybe a little bit lighter. Yeah. So, it's funny that you mentioned that your main motivation to become a lawyer was from the show L.A. Suit.
It's a terrible reason. It's a really bad reason. L.A. Law, it was called. It was about a bunch of lawyers in LA, weirdly, which is where I finally ended up by mistake. But yes.
It was a show from 1980s, if I recall correctly.
In the 80s, yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of good shows in the 80s.
The 80s was like classic TV time. Yeah.
All right. This is actually a little bit fun question for you. So if you can make a fictional character or even a show to promote maybe multicultural awareness on TCK itself, what would it be?
Okay, so I have an answer for this. I can't say it's the lightest, funnest answer, but I think, yeah, it's a good one. So I think one thing that I have been thinking about a lot, especially now I have young children who watch TV, or, you know, they shouldn't watch TV, but they do because they're very young. I've been thinking about the work of Gina Davis. Well, probably familiar with the actress. She set up a foundation which was initially to promote more female characters on screen, because you may or may not know, but if you look at the sheer percentage of male to female roles, it's heavily skewed in favor of men. And the reason why that's important is it doesn't actually reflect what's happening on the street. So on the street, there's maybe 52% female to 48% man. On TV, it's nowhere near that, which means that what they have discovered through research is that what you see on television, this is crazy to me, but it's true. What you see on television ends up informing your view of reality. Isn't that crazy? But it's true. The TV view actually becomes your reality without knowing it. And why is that important? Not only is it skewed heavily male to female, which means that in a meeting, if you have 52% female to 48% male, the men and the women think there are too many women in the room, which is really interesting to me. It feels like there's too many women, even though it's just normal. But it also means that we are heavily skewed towards white men everywhere. What a surprise, because white men are on screen. You know, again, it's changing slowly. But the big thing I was thinking about with a show is if we're not all speaking English, the tough bit is that there are many cultures that English speakers don't have access to. And ditto, there are many cultures that non-English speaking people do not have access to just because of the language barrier. So the show, which to me is a deeper dive into knowing each other, is actually something that already exists. And it's a podcast, because I have to mention a podcast. And it's by this wonderful producer called Laurie Martinez, who has a studio called Ochenta. And she is a super fascinating multicultural kid. She is trilingual Spanish, French, English. And she lives in Paris. And she decided to create something that would sit between her cultures, but also allow people to see other cultures. So it's a fictional audio show about a girl called Mija. But this is the really clever bit. Mija herself is an immigrant. So she speaks through her mother tongue, but in a different country. And she explores her society and talks about it in a really fun way. But the program is also translated into French, Spanish, English, and now Chinese. So that means that you can listen in your mother tongue if you're French, Spanish, English, or Chinese speaker, and get that amazing insight into immigrant culture, what it is to be a new immigrant into a culture. But it's in a cleverly done. And I just love that, because who really takes the time to translate into all these languages? I have no doubt she's going to do more, by the way. That's just where she is now. But for me, that's the dream program, the one that actually brings people from different language groups together to understand and experience, because that's really where the magic happens. I actually come from a long history of linguists. I am like the worst linguist in my family, but I do speak a few languages. My mom is like uber amazing linguist. And my grandmother also, she was a professional translator at the World Health Organization. So she was a very, very important person in the world of translation. And we would have lots of conversations around not only the understanding of each other through speaking the same language, but the misunderstanding that happens between those spaces. And I think any show that can illuminate people's inner world in a really authentic way, not through like a lens of Hollywood, but the real deal, that's the great stuff. So I really encourage everyone, if you haven't listened yet, to go and listen to Mija, the podcast. Hopefully we can put a little note about it, but it's a great show. So that's what I would have invented had Laurie not done it first.
Well, it's not a competition. I mean,
Well, yeah,
any
exactly.
form of representation of multicultural is always good. I mean, this is something that I have been really particularly proud of, is because several of my guests actually started their own podcast, or maybe got their podcasts quite known due to the fact that they come to my show. So this is something
Wow,
that I've been really happy about.
that's amazing.
And yeah, this actually allows me to collaborate, to attend to their own podcast, to actually spread about the awareness. So this is something that I've been really proud of. And yeah, I
Yeah,
hope this is something that keeps on growing.
it's great. And what I love about it also is for you and for Laurie and all the others is you don't need like a multi-million-pound budget to get it out. You know, you and I would not have a hope in hell of financing a Hollywood film, okay, where we talk about cultural representation, not only because we wouldn't be able to afford the money, but also
Nah,
because
the
it would never
executives
get
won't want to
commissioned.
spend
Like,
like that.
yeah, no agent's going to pick that up. But this, you know, we get to do what we think is important. And as someone once said to me about podcasting, it's choose your own adventure. And I love that. I think that's what it is. Choose your own adventure.
Yeah, I do agree. Just a little bit of reference on that. I technically have spent only around $200 for everything, just to let people know how much I've actually spent for my
That is
equipment.
good.
200
That
bucks,
is
but
good.
that I've done for what is the month of July. Wow, okay. In 2 months, I've technically done this for over a year. Oh wait, not technically. I've done this for a year. So
Wow.
for that 1 year, I spent only around $200.
That's not bad
So
at all. I think
yes,
you're beating even my budget, which is quite small. I think I'm around the 400 mark.
yeah. If anybody are interested to that, ask that, please leave a comment later on. Thank you. Okay, moving on. All right then, Lara. So how do you feel the more awareness of global culture actually could promote more multicultural studies and also awareness of it? And if you don't mind, I actually would love this, since you are already a mother. Imagine that what you hope that the society would be able to provide for your children, as you had earlier mentioned with regards to Korea.
Mm-hmm. So is the question like how is awareness of multicultural things, how will it help them?
Yes, that is
Yeah,
correct.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think there's two things. One, if you're multicultural in your outlook, you are just you're a better person to work with. You're more aware of like the pain points for people who are not from the dominant culture, and you can address that in advance. Um, and I think you're just aware of the fact there is a dominant culture. I think if you're brought up in the dominant culture, you don't even realize there is a dominant culture because it's your culture. Um, so I think that makes you a much better colleague. It makes you much more collaborative to start with. And I think my girls will probably have that to begin with anyway. And I want to be very purposeful about creating that space for them. The other thing is just how it helped me personally. The British are notoriously bad about learning other languages. Like it's horrible. It's horrible how bad our language skills are because we speak English and therefore there's not a big impetus to learn anything else. But actually, it's pretty lazy. It's bad. It's really bad. I didn't have that luxury not to learn other languages because, my mother and my grandmother were not having any of it. I had to learn other languages. It was important. And thank God they pushed me, because how has it helped me? From day one, the fact that I speak Russian, I cannot tell you, has got me so many jobs because people remember me. It's very strange, but they remember the fact that I speak an unusual language. So there may be a sea of hundreds of candidates or thousands of candidates, and people will go, "Oh, you speak Russian." And okay, they may not need Russian in the job, but what ends up happening is you just become someone that's stuck in someone's mind because you had a conversation about Russia, which for everyone is still a very fascinating country because it's quite unknown, I think, for most people. or, the fact I lived in China becomes a topic of conversation. So I would say for my girls, but also broadly for the world, seeking out unusual experiences and seeking out unusual languages becomes a talking point, and that talking point becomes a connection, and that connection can lead to really great things in your life and your work. So never be afraid of doing something a little unusual. I mean, I think that's the thing. My mother was always very unusual, and she kept on saying, be unusual. And that's kind of like hard when your parent says, be unusual. What does that even mean? But she didn't say those words, be unusual, but what she meant was, do something different, stand out, because it will help you professionally. So I went to university to study law with French, because French, everyone was studying French. No offense to French, but it's not really the most useful language in the world because there's very limited places that speak French. I should have, Spanish was not a thing in the UK at the time. So on my very first day of university, I went in with my law and my French degree, and one of the law professors, this is crazy, she came up and she said, I read your CV, you speak Russian. I mean, why she picked me out, I have no idea. And I said, yes. And she said, why the hell are you studying French? Like, drop French right now, go and study Russian. You will get such a rich experience out of doing that. And you will be so unusual. You'll be the only student in the whole university studying law with Russian. And so I took her advice and I dropped French and took up Russian. And she was right. I was that only student. So that only student then went on to have lots of very interesting experiences because I was the only one, So that's my little story, which is just seek out weird, unusual ways of learning, because I think it's very valuable going forward.
Okay, just give me a moment to digest that. Wow.
I know, it's a bit crazy.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, guys. There's a tip for you guys. Start learning Russian.
You have to be Russian. I mean, choose your... I mean, I think people are more purposeful about language learning now. Like, you'll see young students coming in and they're like, oh, I want to learn Chinese because it's so useful. But that wasn't really the case before so much. I think students are getting better. But yeah, definitely learn unusual languages. If you can really excel at Chinese in a world where no one is, you already have this enormous advantage. Enormous. I still very rarely meet amazing Chinese speakers who are not Chinese. I mean, my Chinese is horrible, like really horrible. I've tried. It's a very hard language. I need to give it many more hours. But yeah, that would be my tip for the top. Unusual languages.
没问题啊。以前我在新加坡15年，我还可以用比较好了。
Yeah, but you've had Singapore, so well done. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to be honest, my Chinese sucks, honestly. Yeah.
It sounded quite good.
It's within a conversational level and a year worth of working at translating numerous documents, since my dad does work with investors from China. So
you read Chinese too?
Yeah, I do.
Wow.
Thing is that just to be honest, I'm a lot more comfortable speaking English even compared to my own mother tongue, which is Bahasa Indonesia.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, but that's amazing. If you can read Chinese, my God, kudos. Very hard.
Yeah,
my mom grew up in
the much more traditional Chinese. I have a little bit difficulty in it because in Singapore, in fact, it was not so regularly used. I mean, I do know it if I do see it, but the thing is that when I do, let's say maybe I translate it, then I realize, oh wait, I know this word. Oh, this is how it was written. Okay.
So in Singapore, they mainly use simplified characters.
That is correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So Danny actually left.
I know. I saw that.
So yeah, Danny was actually in my past episode, as we mentioned earlier. So she left a comment here. Her flatmate in Eastern Berlin at her university studied Chinese. You're so correct.
Wow. In East Berlin, how fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like your flatmate might have, I don't know when this was, but my mum actually grew up in Beijing. Yeah, it's a crazy story. So my mum's Chinese is okay. I mean, she's going to say it's great. Sorry, Mom. It's probably a bit rusty now. But yeah, her family were in Beijing as part of this sort of. There were a group of foreign experts that came to Beijing in the 50s to work on like cross-cultural education, and my grandparents were part of that group. So that was a very unusual time to be a foreigner in China. So yeah, I have a lot of long Chinese history.
Okay, Donnie actually left another one, and it was the year the wall came down.
Came
Oh,
down,
okay.
which
Wow.
was, is it 89? My history is bad, but I think it might have been 89.
I wasn't born yet.
I know you weren't. I
Sorry
know.
about that.
Yep. It was 1989.
Wow.
Yeah.
My second sister was 1 year old.
My,
Yeah, it's 1989 according to Donnie.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
wow. That's
I was kind
wow.
of impressed that I remembered the year then. Whew.
Kudos.
I know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
your mom
sorry.
was-
Let's keep you
yeah.
back on track. Forgive me for
No worries, no
digressing, but
worries.
yeah.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, so we will actually, this is actually the last question.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, okay. One of your area is, of course, okay. I'm in a little bit of trouble. Sorry, Donnie.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Yeah, so this is going to be my last question. And
Yes.
one of your area is, of course, in legal tech and, of course, on podcasting also, yeah? So, do you have any books or advice for those who could be interested in a future career in legal? Earlier, you didn't mention it, but let's try to make it a little bit more positive, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, no,
And
I mean, yeah, I have a lot of
yeah.
love for legal. Yeah.
Yeah, and also it's because with the advancement of technology, I believe that maybe in the future there will be a different method to approach a legal. Maybe I'm not sure about that, but one of the way now that I've heard about it is there are companies who actually like they keep a deposit of the past documents. So that is something that's quite interesting. Yeah, and also Laura, I'll hand the platform back to you again.
Okay, so I would say if you're interested in a legal career, I mean, just a few bits of advice. Number one, law is, depending on where you study, law can be like medicine. It can be quite an expensive education because it's quite long. And depending on what your university system is, you may be studying for quite a few years. There's no problem with that. But I do know that there are people go into university to study law and then they get very disillusioned about the learning side and then they never become lawyers because they're so burnt by the experience. And I was actually the same when I got out from my law degree. So what I would say is, as I said before, if you can study something else and transfer, most legal systems allow you to study a different undergraduate degree that's nothing to do with law and then to convert. Because the big thing you have to remember is the practice of law is so different to the studying. The practice of law is fascinating. It's deep, it's cultural, it crosses boundaries, it helps companies create wonderful things, and it is a great career. Second thing I would say is, thank God, law is finally modernizing. Okay, it's only really been the last few years that I've seen massive impetus, but now there's conferences springing up. There's jobs that are coming out there that are not for lawyers, but they're for legal tech people or legal operations people, which is wonderful to see. So if you're interested in the business of law, you don't have to be a lawyer. This is the great thing. There are amazing startups out there now doing wonderful things where they are streamlining the process of the practice. So you can work in the startup community. Because I mean, the big thing is law is big business. It makes a lot of people a lot of money, but it's also horribly inefficient in many, many areas because it's extremely document based. So there's and it's history. Law is history. You need lawyers to document things over years and years and years, and disputes and all this. So there's a world ripe for change there, right? So you could work for a startup. You could set up your own startup. I mean, wow, how good would that be? Especially, from Singapore, there's a lot of legal tech startups there. If you're from a software engineering background, lawyers, startups are desperate for people from that background. So my second piece of advice really would be, if you want to work in the field of law, because it's lucrative and interesting, you don't have to be a lawyer. There are many, many other ways of approaching it. And I probably don't have a way of communicating these things now, but maybe if there's show notes afterwards, I don't know how it works for the live. But there's a couple of really good conferences I would recommend people get dialed into, like Legal Geek, which is run out of the UK, and I think they run it out of the UK and in the US now. And of course, great time to be getting into knowledge because everything's free because it's online and no one can charge for conferences. They bring together all these legal tech and legal ops people from around the world to talk about their products. And it's super inspiring. I mean, if I was going to go into the startup world now, I would think of law because it's so behind everywhere else, so there's so much opportunity. It's not like Deliveroo and restaurants that's been and gone. There's a million, restaurant delivery apps out there, but there's still a lot that could be done in the legal space. I wouldn't bother with books. There's nothing that you need to read right now. Go to conferences, speak to people, find them on LinkedIn and just talk to them. Legal design is also a super interesting area, which is looking at how one designs a better experience. So, even people in the design field could look at law. It's a really good time to be getting into it.
Sorry, if you don't mind, I want to ask a little bit of a branch question on that.
Yeah.
So with your own experience growing up multiculturally, because the whole time we've mentioned about it, how your experience growing up as multicultural has actually assisted in your legal career, how do you think this will influence the next generations of TCKs?
Well, I think I would say probably the warnings for the people who are not multicultural, to be honest. Especially working in Hong Kong, like the young students that were coming through, working in China, the students I was working with, they're already bi or trilingual, and they're highly educated. And I'm not trying to make everyone feel desperately sad about their own opportunities, but it's more, I actually see that change is already taking place and it's fantastic. I think if you are a linguist, go out there and learn a language. If you're not a linguist, be open to examining other cultures so that you can be that worker for the future. Because actually, if we have an office, even though the office is going to be very different now, obviously, it's going to have 20% of the people in. But actually, this is a very good point. If we never go back to the office and we never have these moments having coffee together or restaurants together that we used to, and it's all online, and it's like this, people's ability to understand each other culturally is going to be the gel of the future. And it's going to be something people look at. I think they should have already been, testing people for their multicultural openness in interviews, but they don't. But they will need it. They will need it very strongly. So if that is you, you're very well placed for the future, because they're going to need people that can bring diverse remote teams together and to galvanize them and to celebrate them and to look after them and help them work at their best. And multicultural people, for me, will be the best people to do that.
All right. That is actually the last question. So yeah, just a little bit of shout out. Thank you so much for those who have watched the show. So for these lovely individuals who have given a likes and the heart emoji is by Donnie. Yeah, I'm not trying to rub in the youth, but sorry about that. Okay, let's moving on. All right, so we have both Jason and Patrick, the Vogel brothers. They've been really, really supporters of the show. Ben actually has his own show. It's called bender.org. Do check it out. Yeah, Ben was actually one of the person who got inspired to do his own show after becoming.
That's very cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, and there's these two lovely ladies, Miss Joyce Olaya and Miss Nicola Jane Gregory. I'm not sure who they are. Are they your contacts, Laura?
No.
Oh, okay.
Just
Welcome to the
randomly
show.
tuning in.
Oh, that's wonderful. All right. Yeah. So
I'm very surprised my mother hasn't commented because I've mentioned her so much, which means she's not watching, which is probably a good thing. She can listen after.
Yeah. Let's. Is there a way you want me to try to find a way to edit that out, or no?
No. Of course not. No.
All right. Yeah. So there's also some gifts for you guys. So there's also a referral code for Airbnb and a Canva credit card, which is located on the description box. So yeah, if you do want to reach out to Lara, I've actually attached a podcast there. So please do check it out. So other than that, this is the end of episode 68 of Global Citizens, connecting globally in 2020. So with that, please take care of yourself, stay safe, and hope the remaining months of this year will be a good one for you. So take care, guys. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.